قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الحكيم يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الأمين الكريم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Regardless of how many people turn up to a gathering in which the Prophet ﷺ is remembered and his birth is celebrated, his miracles are celebrated, and his legacy, which will continue beyond Yawm al-Qiyamah, is celebrated, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will record you turning up today at the expense of doing other things. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in your lives for turning up to such an event in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is remembered, honored, and our hearts, as always, our hearts are inclining towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and yearning for him. Today's gathering is to mark the birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an event in history, not just Islamic history, but an event in history which changed everything. It changed the present at that time, and it changed the future generations to come, and it changed the entire landscape. It changed the way people thought. It changed the way people operated. It changed the way people looked towards others. It changed the way people treated their daughters. It's very famously known that in the times of Jahiliyyah, people would bury their daughters alive. And there's many accounts of this before the Prophet ﷺ came. But one of the most striking and the most emotional accounts of such depravity was a man who had a girl born in his house, and he wasn't happy about it. But rather than killing her as they would immediately, he allowed her to grow up to the age of 5 and 6, such a tender age. And as they nourished and nurtured this young girl, the time eventually came where he was going to carry out such a horrific deed, which many years later he would recount and tell the Prophet ﷺ. This man, his daughter was 6 years old, and he promised to take her out on a day out with her father. She was very excited about this, and he takes her out to the desert areas, and she's very excited, and she has done her hair, and she is wearing new clothes, very excited to be going out with her father. Eventually, when they reach the destination which he had in mind, he begins to dig up the soil, and she starts to help him in this endeavor, not realizing the plan which he has in mind. So they begin to dig the ground using their bare hands, and there she is in the middle of the desert, in the blazing heat of Arabia, perspirating and moving her hair out the way so she can continue with this activity with her father, not realizing that a gruesome end is coming her way. As the deep hole becomes even bigger, eventually the father pushes the daughter in. And she's of course hurt as she enters the hole, and she looks from 6 feet beneath the earth, looking above the surface of the earth towards her father, not realizing and trying to make out from his facial expressions whether he is angry with her. And she begins to plead with him. However, her pleading falls on deaf ears, as he then begins to smother her with the soil. She then begins to cry, and she says to her father, "Did I do something to harm you? Did I do something to upset you?" And he doesn't listen to her. He continues on this barbaric rampage, and he continues to smother her with soil until eventually her screams and her noise becomes muffled to the point where there's pin drop silence once again in the desert. He buried his daughter alive, and off he went without showing any remorse whatsoever. He went back to his home in Mecca. When he later recounted this same story to the Prophet ﷺ, he wept, and the Prophet ﷺ wept until their beards were soaked in tears. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "Was there no mercy in your heart when you did this? How could you do such a horrific crime? You buried your daughter alive." And this was the norm. Pre-Islam, this was the norm. It was only when the Prophet ﷺ came and gave glad tidings to whosoever has a daughter and looks after her, clothes her, feeds her, gets her married, that he will be with the Prophet ﷺ like this, and showed his ummah with his noble fingers. This is how close that person will be with the Prophet ﷺ. Because prior to that, girls were not considered to be the same level as males, and nobody wanted to have any girls in their household. And so this is the brutal way in which they would get rid of the girls. So Islam came and gave rights to young women, to girls. And this man, he asked the Prophet ﷺ for forgiveness, and the Prophet ﷺ gave him the glad tidings that with the advent of Islam, it wipes away all a person's previous misdeeds, no matter how evil and wretched they were. And a person starts afresh. This man was none other than Sayyiduna Dihya al-Kalbi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he changed his life. This young girl and all the young girls prior to that who were buried alive are in Jannah, there's no doubt about this. But it was Islam that came and changed the complexion of the entire Arabian Peninsula, the Hijaz. And this is what we're here to celebrate today, the coming of the Prophet ﷺ. So without further ado, I would like to ask our very own Imam and teacher, Hafiz Saleem, to come and recite Quran al-Kareem and also recite a na'at in praise of the Prophet ﷺ.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وسلم عليك يا حبيب الله صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وسلم عليك يا حبيب الله نہ کہیں سے دور ہے منزل نہ کوئی قریب کی بات ہے نہ کہیں سے دور ہے منزل نہ کوئی قریب کی بات ہے جسے چاہے جیسے نواز دے یہ در حبیب کی بات ہے جسے چاہے جیسے نواز دے یہ در حبیب کی بات ہے جسے چاہا در پہ بلا لیا جسے چاہا اپنا بنا لیا جسے چاہا در پہ بلا لیا جسے چاہا اپنا بنا لیا یہ بڑے کرم کے ہیں فیصلے یہ بڑے نصیب کی بات ہے یہ بڑے کرم کے ہیں فیصلے یہ بڑے نصیب کی بات ہے نہ کہیں سے دور ہے منزل نہ کوئی قریب کی بات ہے وہ بھٹک کے راہ میں وہ بھٹک کے راہ میں رہ گئی، یہ مچل کے در سے لپٹ گئی، وہ کسی امیر کی شان تھی، یہ کسی غریب کی بات ہے۔ میں بروں سے لاکھ برا سہی، میں بروں سے لاکھ برا سہی، مگر ان سے ہے میرا واسطہ۔ میری لاج رکھ لے میرے خدا، یہ تیرے حبیب کی بات ہے۔ میری لاج رکھ لے میرے خدا، یہ تیرے حبیب کی بات ہے۔ نہ کہیں سے دور ہے منزل، نہ کوئی قریب کی بات ہے، جسے چاہے جیسے نواز دے، یہ درے حبیب کی بات ہے۔